name is Lee Adamson, and I'm one of the many volunteers working behind the scenes to bring today's much anticipated event to you. And I'd like to officially welcome you to the 2020 Eco Fair Toronto. Being a virtual event, you may be joining us from the Toronto area, elsewhere in Ontario, Canada, or even international, in which we find really excited. And no matter where you're calling from, we're really glad that you're here with us today. So this event you'll enjoy today is part of a 4-week celebration of the start of a green new decade. Climate scientists have given us 10 years to turn things around. There are solutions, awesome people groups and businesses making amazing progress. So let's all celebrate their achievements, learn about solutions, imagine what we can each do, and then be inspired to take action. So we're very excited about today's program, and we're very thankful to the organizers and the presenters who have volunteered to make it happen, as well as to all of you for joining us today. To begin, we'd like to acknowledge and thank the Indigenous people of this land. We are hosting this event today from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, we respectfully share this land acknowledgement as a way to recognize the enduring presence and resilience of Indigenous peoples for time immemorial. We also ask participants to reflect on how we are all accountable to these relationships. So thanks again for joining us. Now let's get the program started. Together we can make this a green new decade. So let's celebrate, learn, enjoy, and then take action. So to begin, I'd like to turn things over to Jake Miller. He's project manager for Project Neutral, and he'll tell you about Project Neutral's award-winning carbon calculator, a really useful tool to help you understand your climate impact and what you can do about it. So take it away, Jake.
Thanks so much, Lee. It's a pleasure to be sitting down here with everyone. As Lee mentioned, I'm the acting director for Project Neutral, and we have a little household carbon footprint calculator that's designed for an Ontario audience. So as part of a webinar that's all about cutting your carbon, it felt like a really good place to start would be measuring your carbon so that you can know just how much you need to cut. So I'm going to walk you through the Project Neutral calculator, and I encourage all of you to open up another browser window or pull out your phone and go to projectneutral.org. You'll see this lovely smiling woman and have everything in front of you. And once you get here, you're going to click Get Started. And you're going to create an account with us. And we need an account because you can keep coming back. You can do surveys again and again. There's a bunch of action cards you can do. So it's a platform that we hope that you return to. For right now, I'm going to create a fake account. So I'll be fake Jake. I could be fake email.ca. And then you need a password that's at least 8 characters. Subscribe to a newsletter. Because this is a fake account, I'm going to say no. But if you're putting in a real email right now, I'd encourage you to say yes. We don't send out a newsletter very often. It won't clutter your inbox too much. And then we're going to create an account. Ooh. And look at, I've obviously used this email before. So there we have it. All right, so we're going to just go through our Getting Started survey. It's a really brief run through of all the calculations that we're going to do. You can do deeper dives later, but this is going to get you a really good estimate based on just a few questions. So we're going to start with where you live. I'm here in Toronto. You can put in, you don't need to answer this, your postal code if you prefer not to. Then we want to know kind of the composition of your home, who's living in it. So in my home, it's myself and my wife and our young daughter. And we live in an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment. If you live in a house or a townhouse, we ask how many stories. We're trying to get a good estimate of the square footage of your house with this question. So I live in an apartment. If I live in a bachelor, it counts 1 bedroom. We live in a 2-bedroom. We rent this home, and the construction's quite new, but depending on, you might have a mid-century home, you might have an older home here in Toronto. So just put in how old your home is. And then we want to know how you get around. Certainly, I'm a big walker, public transit a lot of the time, less so during COVID. I don't own a car, but there's a certain amount of driving that happens on my behalf. So I'm going to count that towards my footprint. It's a compact car that gets me driven around. And my daughter gets picked up by her grandparents and such. I'd say on an average weekday, that would maybe account for 15 minutes of driving. And for an average weekend, and this is both days combined, I would guess about 45 minutes. And it's a gasoline car, unfortunately. Did anyone travel by plane in the past 12 months? Not in my household, no, I'm afraid not. I didn't get any travel in before everything hit. But if I were to say yes, we're just looking at how many trips per person were taken here. So if a family of 4 took a vacation, you put in 4. If that family of 4 had a parent who went on 3 business trips, you would add 3 more trips. So just getting the total there. But in my case, no air travel for me. And then we want to learn about how you eat. So how would you describe your eating style? I'm an average omnivore, I would say. And how often do I throw out leftovers or spoiled foods? Never is like for incredible people who never do it. Unfortunately, sometimes something gets lost in the back of the fridge, in my case. But I do try to compost whenever I can. My building's great. It's got in-building compost program. Then we want to know how about the waste that you produce. If you live in a house, you probably wheel a bin to the curb for pickup, and you can guess your garbage bin size. In my case, I use garbage bags that I place in the shared garbage system. And we use about those kind of kitchen catcher, grocery sized bags of garbage. How much do we produce in a week? I'm going to guess about 1, maybe 1.5. I'll see. And yes, my household recycling. And then we want to know a bit about how you came to hear about us. I'm going to say at an event, right in go there. And if you have some feedback for me, I read all this feedback. You can just drop it in there. But for right now, we're going to click calculate my results. All right, so here's the results for me. We're comparing you to households of the same size of yours. So this is how my footprint compares to other households that with 2 adults and 1 kid. So the average for project neutral users is 18.6 tons of carbon dioxide equivalents a year. I'm 11.1, doing pretty good, but there's people doing better than me, and I can see all this here. I can also see a detailed breakdown. So I'm doing great in home energy emissions. I guess living in a little apartment with all these people is good. Daily transportation, there's people doing a bit better than me, but I'm better than average. Travel, because I took no flights, is nil. I am high on food, and I'm a bit high on waste. So I kind of know where the next actions I need to take are. This snapshot of your carbon footprint is what we're going to be kind of using as a lens to look at the rest of this webinar and the rest of the discussions here. But I just want to show you a couple quick things now that you've got an account with us. If you feel like these estimates are wrong, you're going to be able to do deep dive surveys for each of these lifestyle categories, and you'll get a lot more accurate results. You can also use Project Neutral to track actions that you're taking. So you can take these actions, and in fact, at the top of your dashboard, there's an action journal where you'll track your accomplishments, your works in progress. And also, if you're interested in using this as a community group or in your workplace, there's the option to reach out to me and get a group code, and then you'll be able to kind of have an aggregate dashboard that you'll be able to look at together. But for today's purposes, we're most interested in this household impact and the data that we see here. So with that kind of context of what your footprint is, I think we can move on. But I just want to say, because I've done this before and I've walked many people through it, that finding out your carbon footprint for the first time can be a bit of a daunting experience. And it can be difficult, particularly if you're above this average household. But what I want to tell you is that you're doing something that a lot of people aren't doing right now. You're taking this really important first step. And it really doesn't matter what your starting point is. It matters what you do with this information. So let's not look at this as an occasion to blame ourselves or to feel guilt. Instead, use this as a diagnostic tool. And we're going to have a whole workshop that gives you great ideas on what you can do with this information. And with that in mind, I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie from Carbon Conversations, and she's going to do just that for all of you. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Jake. I think I'm all set up here. Okay, so yes, my name is Steph. I'm really excited to be here today with everybody. I'm a volunteer and facilitator with Carbon Conversations Toronto, or CCTO. And CCTO aims to normalize climate action. We want more people to be able to talk about climate change and their reactions to it, to feel a part of a community, and to have the motivation, the courage, and the tools to take personal and then collective action to reduce their impact. So now that you've learned a little bit about Project Neutral's calculator, you can see by the questions, there are a lot about your lifestyle, right? And you can see that reducing your personal carbon footprint usually requires lifestyle change. And that's not always easy. So one of our focuses as CCTO is to normalize this climate action and give people the space to talk about their feelings around it and their worries, because we know people care and they're concerned about climate change. We have a lot of information on how to adapt, but on a personal level, knowing that information doesn't always seem to lead to the lifestyle changes necessary to reduce our emissions. So we see this accidental gap between people's values and our actions. So why is it so hard to act on these values and reduce our emissions? One reason is it's simply, it can be overwhelming. And when you really think about climate change, it can be scary and sad when you fully digest what's happening. So yeah, the facts hurt. And what can happen when we experience discomfort around a topic is that in one part of our mind, we acknowledge that reality. It could be, in this case, maybe my footprint is much higher than average. But at the same time, there's another part of our minds that can behave like that truth is just not true. It's a convenient protective mechanism that our minds use to protect us from a painful truth. And that can get in the way of taking action. So to combat this, whether you calculated your footprint along with Jake today, or whether maybe you'll do it later, I encourage everyone to make some space for your reaction to seeing your footprint, and take a deep breath. Know that whatever emotion you feel there is okay. We don't want there to be any guilt, of course, but sometimes that pops up. Some people feel maybe a bit afraid or shocked, or maybe you feel proud or determined. So whatever your reaction is, just know that that's okay. Just like Jake said, that's your starting point. And your reaction is personal to you, but you're not alone in being concerned about this. So another reason change is hard is because living a low carbon lifestyle, it can require us to break outside of certain social norms that can feel isolating. Further, our behavior and our lifestyle choices are tied up with our identity and our sense of ourselves. And we're human, we're not always consistent and rational beings. So even if we value something, we can't always make the decision that we would ideally want to. And we're so connected to the systems that we live in that sometimes it can feel like we don't have much choice. For example, if maybe you wanted to reduce your driving, but there's no public transit or bike lanes near your home, but then it's too costly to live within walking distance of work, that can be really challenging. In those scenarios, it can be tempting to place blame on others. Maybe saying, oh, but it's all up to business or it's all up to government can be comforting to us as an individual. I do want to mention, though, if we do that, we miss an opportunity to take shared responsibility and each do our part. Of course, at this point, we recognize we need action at all levels, but focusing on that responsibility instead of blame can lead to more feelings of empowerment and help us see how we can be a part of the solution. It also might just be hard to know where to start. So we hope we can help you with that today with the calculator and with some pledges to come in a few minutes from Matt and Myrtle. Hopefully that'll give you either a starting point or some renewed motivation to keep taking action. So what we're going to do next is an activity to get us thinking about how we make change just in general in our lives. The idea is that this will help you to decide how to approach your journey in making changes to reduce your carbon footprint. So I'd like everyone to think of a previous change that you made in your life, and it does not have to be related to your carbon footprint. It could be a transition point, changing school or jobs, getting married or retiring. It could maybe be a crisis point in your life or a new resolution like taking on an exercise program. Try to think of something that caused you to make some changes. And I'll be asking you a few questions for reflection on your own. And then we'll split into breakout rooms on Zoom. And you'll have a chance to talk about that a little bit more with a couple partners. I do want to say, if it feels odd to be connected with strangers online, know that we do this often in our in-person workshops when we can have those. And talking through a screen, it's not the same, but I'd like you to picture being in a room of friendly strangers and just turning to the person next to you, like in this picture I have on the slide. So hopefully you have a change in mind. On your own, just spend a moment thinking about that change. Was that change a choice? How did you feel during that change? What helped you? And if you can, think of if there's a difference between a successful change and maybe a change that was only partially successful. So next we'll be breaking out into our groups. Once we break out, we'll give you about 10 minutes to chat with each other about those questions. And we'll be sending the questions plus some extras into the chat window in your breakout room, so you don't have to remember it. That'll be there to help you keep conversation going. And for some technical details, everyone will be automatically added to the breakout room. But if at any time you need to or want to leave, you can just click the red Leave Breakout Room button in the bottom right corner. And that will bring you back to the main session with Jake and some of the other organizers. And if you need any help, you can use the Ask for Help button, and that'll alert one of the co-hosts to come and check in on you on your room and see if we can help you out at all. So we encourage you to turn on your video for this if you can. And let's please all commit to making these conversations judgment-free, supportive, respectful, maybe with an element of curiosity about each other. And I think that would look like really listening to each other, avoiding interrupting, maybe asking some honest questions, And for this activity, I really want everyone to avoid giving advice. If you want to give us some advice, just try to hold it back. The purpose of this activity is for you to explore your own process of change in your lives. And we will get back to climate change and brainstorming some solutions later with Colleen. But for now, just focus on reflecting back in your own life. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat window if you have questions about how this will run. But Mark will get us all in our breakout groups now. And I'll look forward to seeing everybody back after a little time to chat. So yes, welcome back everybody to the main virtual room here. Thanks for participating in that, and I hope hopefully that gave you some time to think about your own personal process of change, like reflecting back a bit and helping you develop a better understanding of how you can set yourself up for success in making a change for your carbon footprint going forward. I'm wondering if anyone would like to share what they learned about themselves in the chat, if there was something they found helpful when they made a previous change, or just kind of a little summary of what you learned in that. I'll just give a few minutes in case anyone does want to share. Sorry, not a few minutes, a couple seconds in case anyone wants to share in the chat. And then we'll keep going here. I know for me, it's talking about it with others is always really helpful and helps keep me accountable. And I like to remember like why I'm doing it. So if anybody does want to add to the chat as we transition to the next point, just feel free. I'd love to read a little bit of a share back. But let's move on forward then. We'll come back to climate action. And I want to encourage everyone to be kind to yourselves as you start or continue to make reductions in your personal carbon footprint and take action on climate change. A little bit of advice, if it does get hard, it can simply help to acknowledge that it's painful to face climate change and it's complicated to alter your lifestyle. So a few things that might help going forward. If you focus on having empathy for others, having a sense of your relationship with the rest of the world, and a proportionate sense of responsibility, that's that shared piece, as well as remembering our positive motivations, so why we care. For example, I want to live in a more just world. Remembering all of these things can help you mobilize your concern into action and make changes that can really stick. If you would like more help with this process, I'd encourage you to follow us on Facebook and sign up for our newsletter. You can also check out our website for more information on our 6-week sessions, where we create more time and space for people to talk about this. And okay, so now that we've talked about our personal processes for making changes in our lives, I'm going to pass it over to Matt and Myrtle to show you some pledges for you to consider. And then they'll talk about how our personal actions link up to the bigger picture. So thanks again, everybody, for participating. And over to Matt and Myrtle. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Myrtle.
And I'm Freya.
We're Climate Pledge Collective, and we're gonna talk a little bit about the context for the situation we're in, and we also have our own a special set of pledges that we designed for the Eco Fair that are kind of like a mini version of our bigger pledge that's on our website. And we're gonna go through a little slideshow with you.
Yeah, so here we are. So first I'm going to start with the big picture. So obviously the climate crisis is a global issue that's affecting all of us. Most severely though, those who do not have the economic or political means to change their situations. And though wildfires have decimated forests just a couple of hours north of Toronto, and though we're increasingly feeling the impacts of more frequent heat waves, thankfully here we're still relatively safe, and so we're in a great spot for enacting climate solutions. And these solutions right now are so urgently needed. From coast to coast, Indigenous communities are impacted and are in the midst of resource battles. You've probably heard in the news what's happening in Nova Scotia with increasingly volatile actions directed at the Mi'kmaq fisheries. And then out west, continuing is the forced extractive practices of Coastal GasLink in Wet'suwet'en territory. So our consumption and demand for national wealth is really fueling these issues and leaving unsustainable carbon footprints, not just over our planet, warming us and our Earth, but also on people. And it's really difficult sometimes, given how busy our day-to-day lives are, to keep remembering that when we're talking about fighting for the planet, we're also fighting for equity and for human rights, because we too, people, are also part of the climate. So reducing our carbon then does have a positive and important impact, and our individual actions most certainly do matter.
Yeah, so I think one thing is a lot of us know how bad the situation is, but we often don't act either as individuals or as governments. So this is Daniel Kahneman, who's a Nobel Prize winning psychologist, and he really thinks that our brains are not well set up for a problem like climate change. Because we mostly sort of follow our daily habits, or we follow social cues, and this is kind of like rational information that is hard to process. We're not sort of adapted evolution-wise to care about parts per million in the atmosphere or that kind of abstract information. So we have to make an effort not just to know the situation, but to start thinking about what our habits are and what our daily life is like and what our sort of psychology of the situation is. One of the things we're up against is path dependency. It's a huge problem. We tend to just do what we did the day before. We're so busy, we don't have time to think about what a better plan is. And you also see it in, if you buy a house in the suburb, it's very hard to switch from driving a gasoline vehicle. So the systems that we're involved in really sort of reproduce themselves. So the thing we're suggesting is for you to sort of put it in your schedule, make it a material part of your daily habits, rather than just something you might see on the news or something you think about. And one way you can do that is we have the pledge we designed for the Eco Fair. When you sign up, you can put in your email, and we'll just send you only one. We'll send you one reminder at the end of the Eco Fair to see how you did on the pledges. And I also made a short video that kind of captures the message that was in Daniel Kahneman's abstract way of talking about abstraction. We designed an Eco Fair pledge, which will be in the chat right now. If you want to go and do it, open it in another tab, you can do it later. But there's 7 categories. There's some similar to the project neutral ones, but we also have some of the ones that are a little harder to quantify, like politics and civics and education. And in each category, you can pick an easy, medium, or hard pledge. And then we have one other thing as well. There's also going to be a link in the chat.
It's a kid's pledge.
Yeah, our small co-founder really was excited by us designing a pledge, and she wanted to design a pledge for kids. So if you have kids, if you are a kid, you can do the pledge yourself. And then we'll go quickly through some of the options.
So we've got a few categories, the first one being food. So to start, you can learn a vegan recipe. You can also try eating vegan for 1 week. And if you're up to it, no red meat for 1 year. So I was definitely in the camp of there's no way I'm cutting out meat. I was a big meat eater, but discovered how easy it is actually to prepare vegan food. And now we've even gone meat-free for a month. So it's definitely something doable, just something you kind of need to try, and you realize how much creativity there is too in preparing vegan food. Beef has 10 times the carbon footprint of pork or poultry. So anything you can cut back will most certainly be helpful. Next category has to do with flights. So obviously a huge source of emissions. One really easy thing you could do is that if you do have to fly, buy gold standard carbon offsets, and less.ca offers some really good choices in that area. Another thing to do would be to actually plan as a staycation, replacing one flight with that. And we have actually done that for a few years in a row, and we've discovered Toronto in greater detail and neighboring cities as well. So it's really a great way, especially with kids, to already know what to expect in a way, and you avoid all of the check-in issues at airports. And the biggest one is no flights in 2021. So if you're ready for that, that would definitely be a big win for the planet.
It's much easier during a pandemic to avoid flying. So the next category is daily transport. I think a lot of us know that automobiles emit a lot of CO2. Not necessarily as high as buildings, but they do. So the easy one is to ride your bike once a week. You can make a promise that your next car will be an EV, maybe not the one right now. Buying a whole new car isn't great for the planet either. So when your current car is done, you can get an EV, or you can find a way to be completely car-free in your lifestyle. We were doing it before we had a kid, and we found we managed to still be able to do it. We have a cargo bike. We get groceries in the cargo bike, and well, before Freya was in virtual school, we would bring her to school in the cargo bike. Did you like riding in the cargo bike?
Yeah.
And then your home is a big source of emissions. And many people think electricity is a big problem, but actually in Ontario, our electrical grid is pretty clean. So you want to focus more on your natural gas. So your water heater, so that's why our easy pledge is just to set your washing machine to cold. That's probably the biggest carbon reduction you can get for turning one little switch. If you just set your washing machine to cold and keep it that way, it's pretty good for one switch flip. The next thing is to get a home energy audit and see what they recommend. You can get these through the government, and there's a lot of subsidies and rebates on certain upgrades on efficiency. So you can actually save a fair amount of money doing that. And the really big pledge, this is a big commitment, is to replace your furnace with an electric heat pump because that will cut down your home emissions almost entirely. And as Jake said, if you're living in an apartment or a condo, your home emissions are already pretty good. So you don't have to worry about this one as much.
Education is another area. A really simple one is to follow 10 climate organizations or activists on social media. And I find actually this is particularly important because the usual news channels don't always report on the gravity of the climate crisis, but social media will give you some insight. Also, of course, you can calculate your footprint at projectneutral.org, and Jake has taken us through that great site for doing that. Another thing you can do is watch There's Something in the Water, or another documentary on environmental racism. And the David Suzuki Foundation actually is hosting an online screening of There's Something in the Water on October 21st at 6 p.m. And actually, there are also other screenings as part of the Eco Fair.
Yeah, the Eco Fair has a lot of great documentaries being screened, so you should visit their website and check one of those out and get your hard pledge done easily this week. Civics is important. This one's again hard to measure, but one of the most important things you can do is talk about climate change and talk to people like friends or coworkers that might not have it in the front of mind. It's great that people who are willing to come to a Cut Your Carbon webinar, but we also really need to start reaching out to the people who won't sign up for a Cut Your Carbon webinar. And the medium pledge in this category is to do it more formally and sign up for carbon conversations or kitchen table climate conversations to really practice your ability to talk about it. And then the hard one is to write to your MP or MPP. It's not actually that hard, but it has a big impact. They get a lot of emails and petitions and stuff, but they actually, I've heard from people working in their offices, don't get that many paper letters. So if you send a paper letter or actually call their office, it does get their attention. And then finally, we talked a little bit about path dependency. So finance is part of the whole trap that we're in. We have a lot of money already invested in the fossil fuels, both as individuals and as an economy as a whole. And that just keeps reproducing this production of emissions. So the easy pledge here is to sign up for Shift Action for Pension Wealth. Just go to their website and get on their email list and start to learn about what's in your pensions, because the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan owns a coal mine in Australia. You might not know that. And the Canadian pension plan that we're all members of actually owns an oil company in the US that has been spending millions on lobbying the government to prevent climate policies in America. And so that's all of our money is going towards that company to do that. The medium pledge is Bank Switch, which is more focused on like your daily banking, your checking account, your savings account. We're running that campaign this fall, and I'll talk about that in 1 second. And then the big campaign is to talk to your financial advisor about divesting from fossil fuels entirely. There's lots of great mutual funds and ETFs. If you tell your financial advisor, it's actually not that hard for them anymore to get you out of fossil fuels. So Bank Switch is the campaign we're focusing most of our effort on. The big 5 Canadian banks put more money every year into fossil fuel industry than almost any financial institution in the world. There's a couple American banks that are putting more money in, but in terms of the size of the bank, the Canadian banks are absolutely the worst. And that's all TD, all the big 5. So the campaign we're trying to do is to get people to just contact their branch manager and let them know that they want a more sustainable bank. You don't actually have to move your money now. The idea is you say that next April, you're going to move to the most sustainable bank you can find. So there are some credit unions that are already quite good, but the banks are starting to hear about this. RBC just made an announcement that they're going to stop funding certain large coal companies. So there's a possibility that if they keep hearing from people, we'll get a big switch out of the big Canadian banks. And I think if one of them switches, they all will. So if this campaign gets big enough, I really think it's one of the biggest changes we can see in the Canadian landscape, at least in the next year or two. And then there's one more thing we want to tell you about.
It's the Kids Pledge, and I mentioned it before, and it's actually a pretty good thing. So it's really good to get kids involved in the climate, and my favorite thing was to go for a bike ride. I do that a lot, actually, and then there were other things too.
Like trying vegan ice cream, that's fun.
Yeah, and making leaf art, which I'm a big fan of.
Oh yeah, making leaf art, yeah. There's a lot of good options. We designed this together, Freya and I, so I think you'll really enjoy it. It's great for kids kind of, I think, 10 and under. Yeah, and then the last thing I wanted to leave you on a note about virtuous circles. We hear a lot about vicious cycles when we learn about climate change, the feedback loops in the environment, but there's also in social change, there are virtuous circles. We also hear sometimes that personal changes and system changes are opposite approaches, but the truth is they're really closely connected and they reinforce each other. So if you become an early adopter of an EV vehicle, for example, you're helping the companies that are making it and you're bringing the costs down and you're starting to produce system change. And then as the cost comes down, suddenly a lot of people are going to choose EVs just because they're cheaper than a regular car. So once the system starts to change, then that affects our personal changes. So those two things reinforce each other. You can start on either side. A government can have some sort of influence on the system and it will make personal changes easier. But as we make personal changes, we're also going to start shifting the whole system. So there's a really possible and positive loop here. So yeah, we wanted to thank you for listening, and we hope you can check in the chat and see the link to the pledges. And we'll hope you'll sign up for some pledges during the Eco Fair.
I want you to remember that if you are included in climate action, you are doing something very important. We climate activists always need to acknowledge that we must help our planet. This is what it means to be a climate activist. Do never give up if you are a starter.
Thank you. And we'll pass it over to Colleen, who's going to talk you through how some actions that will work for you, and sort of we'll get into small groups to talk about that. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Matt and Myrtle and Freya. That's amazing. That information was amazing. It's so exciting. So I have been working for a while now with Climate Fast on a project called the Kitchen Table Climate Conversations. Matt had mentioned them. And during those, we invite people to ask people around their table, their co-workers, their friends, their neighbors, anyone that they can get around their table, and hold conversations where they share their feelings and their ideas. And part of those kitchen table climate conversations is a brainstorm section, and we call it the quadrant section. I'm going to share my screen now and just show you the template. So here's the template for our kitchen table climate conversation quadrant exercise. And during this exercise, we can talk. This is where we can actually share ideas like you've started to share in the chat. It's exciting to see them. So we can share ideas about how to take action as individuals, but we can connect that to the support we need to take collective action in our communities and what we need to see happen there and how we can make change on that level. And it's also a place where we can talk about where we can advocate for change on different levels to help us all, and to make sure that changes are equitable and widespread and swift, and just to make sure that some of the systemic issues that need to be addressed to create a better world that works for everyone are things that we're asking for as well. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and explain. My idea is that we're going to do a lightning brainstorm using the chat, as you have been already. You've been sharing some great ideas. I am going to actually read a question for each quadrant section and say go. And when I say go, I would love it. I invite you to write as rapid fire as you can ideas in answer to that question in the chat. And our chat moderator is going to kindly write stop. And when you see stop, I'm going to go on to the next question. So a lightning blitz. And so I'm going to start by screen sharing again. Oh wait, we're actually going to start with a poll so that we can get oriented and fixate on one particular area so we can really hone in. So I'm going to ask Mark to start the poll for us. So yeah, let us know what you think, where you're at right at the moment. Awesome. This is so exciting seeing the results come in. Very cool. Thank you, everyone. We just have a few more people to vote. Amazing. My goodness. One more person. Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to end this poll and I'm going to share the results so you can all see them. I hope you can all see them now. And we see that most people have picked the area of waste to focus on right now. And we also have energy use coming in a close second, and transportation and food. So that's wonderful. So we're going to focus in on waste then in these questions. And I'm going to share the exercise again. And we're going to move on to the first question. So the first question is, in the area of waste, if you could give us rapid fire ideas about in the chat about what you can do on an individual level to lower your carbon footprint in that area. So go. Oh, these are such great ideas. Buying bulk, use compost, don't order takeout, refuse plastic. These are amazing. And we are going to save the chat, like somebody asked earlier, and share. Local farmers. Oh my goodness, I love that idea. These are wonderful. Natural fibers. Yes, amazing. Fast fashion. Yes, that's a big area. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. Thank you so much. So for the community level, to help us all take collective action and work together, what do we need to see in the area of waste on the community level to change or to accelerate our action or support us? So go. Yes, oh my goodness, I love that idea. Compost pits and the repair cafes that are going on around the city. That's wonderful. And the reduces group. Those are amazing groups. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Shared libraries for tools. I like that one. And secondhand Sundays. Hey, do they happen? I want to go to one of those. More groups like this. Amazing. Those are just, I love this rapid fireness. Okay, so the next question, this gets maybe, this touches on what Matt and Myrtle were talking about, and it's a little more difficult, but from our economic level, in industry and business level, when it comes to waste, what changes do we need to ask for to enable a low carbon future for all? So go. Yes, letters, wonderful. Corporate tax rates. I think actually that would be amazing. Yes, producer responsibility. Secondary uses for their waste products. That's amazing. Tax loopholes again. I think that's a really big one. Yeah. And responsibility, end to carbon infrastructure. Yes. Great. Okay, so now we have one more government level, a system-wide level, the bigger widespread changes we need. What do we need to advocate for to enable swift, equitable, and widespread change? Go. Corporate tax again, yes. Carbon pricing, stop the highway. Jay, that's a wonderful idea. And education for kids, it's wonderful. Carbon credits need to be more expensive. I have heard that before. Yes, government accountability. And stop funding the petrochem industry. Yep. Letters again. Controlling capitalism. And fund renewables. Wonderful. Oh my goodness, these are such amazing ideas. So I've got one more question for you. And this is a question to help inspire us all to keep motivated, to try for change and try to work together. So I would love you to think about a better world. What would a livable future for all, a low carbon world, a better world look like? And I would just like you to answer the question and rapid fire in the chat. What could a better low carbon world look like? What would it look like to you? So go ahead and just give us some ideas about your vision for the future. And while you're doing that, I'm going to stop screen sharing and just let you continue to do that to inspire us to keep going. And as Freya said, to be the starters and to be, to be motivated. And I'm going to actually pass back to Matt and Myrtle and Freya to do some of just some pledging. So thank you so much.
Time for Freya, but I'm back. So I'm gonna show the pledges again. I have a little mini version, and if anyone wants to make a pledge, am I sharing right now? Yes. Okay. If anyone wants to make a pledge, you can just type in the chat which one is appealing to you, and we'll read them out. Freya wants to read them out as well. So if any of these things are appealing to you, just say what you're hoping to pledge. You can do it online later and sign up later, but oh, I'm too loud if I write next to Freya's here. And we'll see what people are interested in doing.
Ooh, there you go.
Eat vegan for 1 week. We already got our first pledge. There you go, Freya. You see them? You see where they're coming in?
Here.
We'll read that.
Look at that.
Replace my...
My dad is going to learn a vegan recipe. 2 vegan recipes. This is, no flights in 2021. That's a big one. That is, I think people don't quite realize, but if you take even like 1 round trip flight in a year, it's going to outweigh anything you can do in the food department. So if you are someone who flies regular, that is, in some ways it's hard, but in another way, it's the easiest way to really take a huge dent out of your carbon footprint.
Well, look at that. Someone just said that they were going to ride their bike once a week.
More than.
Yeah.
More than
Oh,
once
wow.
a
And
week.
replacing a furnace with a heat pump. That is another like
And
huge
then
reduction that will last
the other
too.
one, make next car an EV.
Whoa. Oh, thank you, Freya, someone says. And another learn a vegan recipe. Yeah, learning a vegan recipe, we were omnivores, kind of carnivores, but like just learning those recipes and putting them into your rotation of recipes is the easiest way to make the change I found. Like if you decide I'm going to become completely vegan, it's super hard. But once it becomes part of your regular repertoire, it just sort of is a natural way to reduce your footprint a bit. Setting washing machine to cold. Yeah, that's a great, awesome one. Oh, this is amazing. I feel so good that people are actually pledging to do things.
Go car free. Wow, that's amazing.
If Freya can do it, I can do it, someone says.
There you go.
Yeah, you're a great bike rider.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and relearning to ride a bike, that is something that was sort of new to us as well. That I did transit a lot, but I didn't ride bike until recently, and it's
Like,
really just fun. It's good exercise, and it feels really good.
It's sort of like when I had a pop tire on my bike and then I had to get a new one. That was like relearning. Yeah, that was a relearning.
Awesome. So thanks everybody for showing your support in the chat. And I think Lee has some final closing words. Is that the plan? Oh, and a composter. Somebody set up their own composter. That's really cool.
Such great things already happening too. Oh,
I have a 6-year-old who would like to tell Freya that she has signed her pledge. So another kid did her pledge. That's awesome.
that's awesome.
That's really good.
Oh yeah, and people are saying to join about some of the cycling groups in Toronto. That's really important, especially in the sort of the inner suburbs and Scarborough. We need to get that infrastructure up so that it's safe, because it's scary to ride a bike, especially when we go riding with my daughter. So yeah, we need it to be a lot safer for people. We don't live super downtown now, so some of the roads are pretty hostile to cyclists. So again, that's one of those personal changes connecting to system changes. And when the system changes, it makes it easier for people to make personal changes. So those two things are, yeah, in a virtuous circle together.
I can't believe how many comments I'm getting.
So thanks everybody. We'll hand it over to Lee. Thanks a lot. This is really inspiring. I don't know how to mute it.
All right. All right. Wow, what a fantastic program. This was so exciting to see all the participation today. So I just, on behalf of the Eco Fair organizing committee at Eco Fair Toronto, we'd like to thank all the event organizers, the presenters, the behind the scenes volunteers, everyone, including Freya, who made today such a great success. And I'd also like you very much for participating and so actively in the workshop today. We'd love to have your feedback. This is the first time the Eco Fair has been an online event. We've been an in-life event for 11 years, but this year is a whole new experience. So we'd love to have your comments. There's a link, I believe, in the chat to our very short and easy Eco Fair survey. It's open to the audience, but also presenters and volunteers. We'd like to get feedback from everyone. Also, I want to remind you that there's another 3 weeks of Eco Fair going on, so be sure to check out the Eco Fair Toronto website. so you can explore the other exciting workshops, webinars, and films that are going on. EcoFair runs till the finale on Sunday, November 8th. And at the finale, we will celebrate the pledge makers. So we hope you'll get involved with the pledges, and Matt can report how everyone's doing at the finale on Sunday, November 8th. If you go to the website, ecofairtoronto.org, you can also find out about the neighborhood eco tours happening across the city. The exhibitor showcase, we have 40 sustainable groups and businesses to celebrate, and many of them have short videos, which are really fun to see. And also have a look at the fun and games tabs. There's some great videos and activities, family-friendly things for kids and adults alike. So we hope you've enjoyed this event. We hope you'll be back for more. This week, sort of on topic, the film 2040 is continuing to be free. You can sign up for that. And as well on Thursday, there's a webinar, Waste Not Home Energy, that you could enjoy. So we hope you'll sign up for that. So thank you very much for coming and celebrating with us here at EcoFair Toronto 2020.